One of the things I see when people get chronic conditions and things get really sensitized, and so we seem to be reacting to everything and we get scared about life, is that people start looking for more and more complex solutions to their complex problems. And they're skipping basic steps that provide a foundation of support for that resilience. I know it was true for me. I see it in our students and clients, patients all the time. And so I'm always trying to fill in those gaps of like, think about your water, think about your sleep. Looking from the outside, I would call your philosophy very much about really intentional small steps that add up to huge results. Could you share how you do that and stack that for your family throughout the day?
Absolutely. And this actually came from a complete paradigm shift internally for me that has shifted how I think about this and talk about it externally. There was the mindset shift away from fear and into choosing those things from a place of even self-love, of peace, instead of from being afraid of everything. But one of the pieces that really helped a lot of this fall into place for me was realizing, because you and I have been in this world for a long time, we've seen the biohacking trends, the rise and fall of all the fancy devices and $50,000 protocols that people do and all of this stuff that just aren't accessible to most people. What I realized over and over, and the more experts I've had on the podcast, the common theme, the resonant note among all of it is it really is the core simple things done consistently that at least create the foundation. So then if you're going to bolt on the more expensive things or the fancy testing, it's going to work better because you've already built the solid foundation. And what helped those pieces fall into place for me was actually from my dad, who's an electrical engineer and a biomedical engineer. He built the first, I think, Faraday cage that could read an EKG on an egg while the chicken was still in utero. But I had never thought of health in the realm of electricity or electromagnetism. And all these pieces started falling into place when I realized the body is an electromagnetic organism. We run on voltage gated channels. Everything in our communication, from our neurotransmitters in our mind to our fascia to everything, is electrical. And when we think of health from an electrical first perspective, to me it makes the perfect case for all the baby steps that all of us preach and that people often ignore because they're simple. The things like getting morning sunlight, which yes, primes your melanopsin receptors in your eyes and does all these things for your circadian rhythm. It also quite literally charges your cells, because mitochondria aren't just the powerhouse, they're like the flux capacitor of the entire body, and you're sending them important messages. And then you can reinforce that throughout the day with light, with grounding, with breath work, with hydration, with the truly basic things. But when we think from a voltage perspective, all of that makes sense. And that's also why I feel like the best supplements in the world won't fix a lack of those basic things, because the body is an electromagnetic organism that needs light inputs. And that also goes back to nature. It needs nature inputs.
We always teach about EMFs on our campus in our practice for that very reason, and there's so many different types of electrical stressors that are actually diminishing the body's ability to regulate itself at a bioelectrical level. So I love that you're talking about this. Of course, we need the foundational biocell salts in place to run that bioelectrical charge, but we think about it like the body wants autonomy. The body wants to run its own bioelectrical field. It doesn't want these interferences and trying to scoot over the top of a very inflamed, zapped body all the time and hoping a couple of pills will fix it all. Not actually very realistic, and it's not very respectful. I remember Michael came out of his office when we were both really, really sick. He came charging out and he was like, "The Wi-Fi is killing us. I'm throwing it out." And I'm like, "What?" And I was instantly mad at him because he would just change his mind overnight on all the stuff. And it's like, you got to be kidding me. You're taking away something that I rely on, and you're making my life even harder so that I could possibly have a chance at healing. No, thank you. But when we did turn the Wi-Fi router off at night, I had to acknowledge that not only was I sleeping better and waking up less freaked out, because that's how I used to start the day, is freaked out, but also our cats stopped fighting. He was nicer, Michael was. There were just these ripple effects. You could immediately see, oh yeah, shoot, the body is a bioelectrical being.
And I think that's such an important point you just made too, because even just turning it off at night while you're sleeping and not using it anyway can have an impact. It does not have to be an all or nothing. Even that all or nothing mindset in a lot of cases actually causes more stress. There's a time and a place for being all or nothing when you have to be, but it's too easy to fall into that across the board. And so I feel like if you can make baby steps that make a difference, like just taking the Wi-Fi down when you're already not using it, that's awesome.
So what are some other ways that you stack habits for your family to really protect you and create resilience in this day and age?
Well, I love that you brought up the Wi-Fi. I have automated that with a digital timer, so it just goes down at night. Same thing with all devices live in the kitchen at night, which I had to model. I had to learn that myself, but all devices charge in the kitchen. I think as a parent, the most power we have is in modeling. As an example, I used to think I hope my kids want to take music lessons, and I would try to encourage them, do you want to take music lessons? Do you want to take piano? Do you want to take voice? And they didn't want to. And then I realized, oh, I want to do this. I wish I had done this as a kid. I want to take music lessons. So I just started taking voice lessons, and then all of a sudden they were all interested in music. So I think as a parent, our power is in setting the example much more than the words, of course. So for me, that's looked like making my daily habits, modeling them in what I do, and just explaining them when the kids got interested in it. So they see me go out every morning and be barefoot in the grass and get sunshine and hydrate with minerals before caffeine, before I touch a screen, before anything else. And without me telling them, they started doing that. Or they see me lifting weights or walking and they get interested in doing it because they see it, not because I'm telling them to. Same thing with like, we just build so much of food culture in our family around nutritious foods. And that's also all that's in the house. So it's very common for them to like cook a pound of lamb as a snack because that's what's there. They've been taught to cook from a young age. So I also think like if you just build it into the culture of your home, that's a huge advantage. And from the movement perspective, that means my house looks very strange. There's climbing hangboards in the kitchen. There's gymnastics mats down the hallway. There's rings in all the kids' rooms for gymnastics. But if you put it in their way, they're going to play with it. I think the habit stacking for me is like the morning category is huge. Light hydration and gentle movement before caffeine. And also I try to do protein before caffeine, which for a lot of women at least is very nervous system calming. And then throughout the day, just like little daily touch points of healthy habits. That has made the biggest impact, both in my own healing from Hashimoto's and also in seeing my kids adopt those habits.
I can hear the overwhelmed parents now, like, Katie, I had a sick kid, or I'm not feeling well. I'm still earlier on the journey than you. That all sounds really complicated. What are the things that are going to move the needle the most for me?
Oh, my heart totally goes out to that because I vividly remember being the mom with 3 toddlers who was so tired with Hashimoto's that I would fall asleep in front of the front door so they couldn't go run in traffic and just have to sleep. Like I was so tired. In that phase, as I started learning, I was like, truly like, what little bitty baby step do I even have the bandwidth to attempt? Because it was like, there's the non-negotiables of I have to feed the kids, I have to bathe the kids. In the beginning, it looked like I would set my alarm for whatever time sunrise was, and I would go outside and fall back asleep in a lawn chair outside, but in the natural light. Like it was like little tiny baby steps. I would put a quart of water with a pinch of baking soda and some salt on my nightstand so that I would remember to drink it in the morning. Like it was not anything groundbreaking, but over time, that plus mindset shifts, those little shifts, and giving myself grace to let them be baby steps. Like my personality is like, let's extreme change everything overnight.
Right,
that's not
too.
sustainable.
If it's not extreme, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But I can't tolerate anything extreme because I'm so sensitive.
If you're sick and working through something chronic, you just don't have the bandwidth for that. So for me, it was like holding myself to the baby steps until I started getting more bandwidth and I wanted to add the more things in. And it was a lot of things. Like I didn't do any high intensity exercise for 2 years. I spent time in nature. I was hydrated. I slept a ton. I was gentle with myself. I still had to be restricted for a little while with food because there were things I was reacting to. And I shifted my mindset away from restriction and into like, of the things I can eat and that I love, how can I both maximally nourish myself and find the most joy and pleasure in this food at any given time? Because those were like small safety signals to my body. Those were small like acts of love that helped over time kind of build that reserve up. And I started noticing I eventually had more bandwidth and I had more resilience and I could do the bigger things. And eventually I could lift weights again. Things really started shifting, but it was those tiny baby steps and being so patient when it felt like things weren't changing.